Hey everyone, this is Josh, and this is my contemporary Indigenous leadership presentation or talk. So I went on the University of Arizona website, and I searched around. I watched a few videos, and I found one that I liked because of the diversity of voices in terms of both describing Indigenous leadership and then talking about the values that sort of undergirded what Indigenous leadership is all about, and how various nations are thinking about um, rebuilding their nations, and that's actually a key term. The rebuilders, they call them. And so there is this foundation, the Bush Foundation, in conjunction with some other folks that I'll talk about in a moment, that brings together, leaders from various tribes up in the Midwest, and guides them through a bunch of sessions to build skills and knowledge around Indigenous leadership and the idea of being of a nation rebuilding itself. It was called Native Nations Rebuilders Speak, the video that I watched. There's a reference at the back page. And like I said, it's participants of the Bush Foundation, and they offer personal perspectives on nation building and share their experiences in the program. These are just a few of the tribes that are represented: Cheyenne River Sioux, Leak Lake Band of Ojibwe, Oglala Sioux, Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, and there were many more, and I'll talk about what the other ones were in a while. Actually, I'll talk about that right now. So to date, this map comes from the video. I took a screenshot of it. The Bush Foundation has chosen rebuilders from 18 of the 23 Native nations that share geography with North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. So you can see the Great Lakes region up here in the corner of Minnesota, and of course North and South Dakota right next door. And then these are all of the the nations that have been served by the Bush Foundation and this organization. So you can see all the way from northwest North Dakota all the way to the very tip of Minnesota, and throughout the entire region of South Dakota. So just a little bit that I learned about the Bush Foundation. This guy Jamie Pinkham, who's Nez Pierce, uh, said a little bit about the program. So it has a focus on capacity building around Native nations by identifying leaders. So they go out, they try to identify someone, and what was interesting is they try to identify folks not necessarily that were quote unquote leaders. So this didn't have to be somebody who's in a elected position or in a position of tribal governance. They wanted a diverse understanding of what a leader was. There was a focus on collaboration. So one of the keys that I'll talk about when I get to what the participants said about it, was that the idea was, who's doing what well and where, and how can all of us, if it's appropriate, for a particular tribe, how can that tribe adopt things that are working for other tribes, right? So rather than acting in isolation, rather than acting as an island, thinking about native nation building as an interrelated process, where support comes from folks that aren't necessarily in your tribe. A focus on nation building skills and knowledge. And so this is where a few different entities came together, and focused on what nation building is. And I don't know what this means exactly, but they said in a contemporary context, not in a traditional context. So I think the point there was that they were saying, these theories should be rooted in who the people are, rather than some Western idea of what nation building means. And personally, the way that I related to that was thinking about nation building in terms of the lead up to the Iraq War and what's happening in Syria right now, and Western powers trying to govern the world through nation building. So I think this was meant to be in more of a community specific sense. And then learning about public speaking and public policy. And so there were short videos of, or there were short segments of the video that were about participants learning about the public sphere and how to communicate messages both to native and non-native communities in order to push forward with an agenda that supported nation building. And then this all culminates in a plan, and it culminates. This plan is something that the leader who's trained is supposed to take back to the tribe and implement, and do rounds of information collecting to make sure that it's working. So all of it is sort of designed to build up to this larger plan, which kind of reminds me of the work that I do in the NACA Inspired Schools Network around education. When we have fellows come in, our focus is on a lot of this stuff: collaboration, capacity building, community organizing, lots of things like that. But then it ultimately culminates into a school design plan that's either submitted to a tribe or submitted to a state like New Mexico or South Dakota for a charter school. But just this whole rhythm that guided the Native Nations work reminded me a lot of what I do on a daily basis. So, what is Native Nation building, rebuilding, according to leaders? Apologize for the typo there. And this comes from the folks who were fellows, if you will, in the program. So they were the actual leaders who were learning this and then going back to apply it to their tribes. One gentleman said, executing a stable government to plan 7 generations ahead, getting back to that idea of 7 generations that I'm sure many of us have heard before. Another woman said, being self-sufficient, independent, and owning our decisions. So a note to sovereignty and to long-term governance that allows for independence from the United States. Collaboration with governments and what they've done in the past, and see how relevant their actions are to our community. This goes to what I was saying earlier about the idea of working tribe to tribe or inter-tribe to say, hey, what are you doing with education? How can we do that thing that you're doing well? What are you doing with economics? What are you doing in your relationship with the federal government? So the idea of intertribal collaboration to improve all nations. And the last one that I pulled out was empowerment of individuals and groups. So restoring of pride and identity, and reminding people who they are and that they are worthwhile, that they're worth something. Again, personal connection here to how our schools and the NACA Inspired Schools Network design their schools around somebody being knowledgeable in their own identity, being allowed to and forced to explore their identity through curriculum at a as young as a kindergartner, as old as a 12th grader. So what is the value of such leadership cohorts? I thought that was an interesting question. According to the individuals who are in this program, few quotes here. It's an opportunity to gain necessary tools and go back to help my people. So this fits with the idea of the collaboration. So that there were 3 collaborative entities in this program: Harvard University's School of Business, the Native Nations Institute, and the Bush Foundation. And these 3 work together on all of the policy initiatives and the public speaking, public initiatives that I mentioned before. Another person said, I found myself challenged, supported, in a place of dreaming a big dream again, thinking about the direction of her tribe as a powerful thing that she could pull together. And another said, it does a heart good to know that others are involved in this same work. So, collaboration, but also acknowledging that, there are numerous leaders. I mean, just this whole class about Indigenous leadership, we could always point to a single person like LaDonna Harris or Cornell Purity, but really leadership is much more widespread, and leaders in a single building. Many of leaders in education and Indigenous communities or in tribes. So the idea that there are others that are involved in this and doing the same work was heartening to some people. The resources that I'm building are going to be the greatest asset I can work with. I've built capacity in myself as a leader, and Interestingly, a woman at the very end asked, this has raised the question, who should be a Native leader? So again, looking to a more community-specific definition of leadership, um, which I thought was interesting. All of this reminded me of the AIO Ambassadors Program that a few folks that I've worked with have talked to me about. Anpo Duta Flying Earth, for one, the executive director of NACA. And so it's a similar program, and I found this information on their website. So their mission is is an Indigenous value-based community capacity building leadership development initiative launched in '93. The program helps early to mid-career Native American professionals strengthen within an Indigenous cultural context their ability to improve the well-being and growth of their communities. And I have watched people like Duta go all around the world with these communities to learn about other Indigenous communities and to build their own leadership capacities. So just a note on their history. They say they're the only leadership initiative in the United States encouraging participants to weave their respective traditional tribal values into a contemporary reality. I think that might need to be updated, perhaps, based upon the video that I watched and the Bush Foundation program that's doing this too. But the Ambassadors Program provides a creative combination of curriculum, including mentorship, personal reflection, dialogue, national decision makers, all sorts of travel and community values. If you look at the photo, this is of course Machu Picchu, and I think that's Duta right there. Though I could be mistaken because it's kind of hard to see. But anyway, another opportunity within leadership to do this kind of thing. Here are my references: the Bush Foundation I accessed at the University of Arizona site, and Americans for Indian Opportunity. I'm looking forward to looking at your presentations as well, and I think that's all I have. Thanks.